In October 1929, a bank clerk in New York City walked into work with $10,000 in his savings account. He'd saved for 20 years. He did everything right. He kept his money safe in the bank. By November, that money was still there, every dollar, sitting safely in the bank. The account balance hadn't changed. The bank hadn't failed. But he couldn't buy groceries. He couldn't pay rent. His life savings had become worthless, not because the bank failed, but because of something far more insidious that nobody talks about. That same pattern destroyed savers in Weimar Germany in 1923. It wiped out the middle class in Argentina in 2001. It quietly erased wealth during the 2008 crisis. And right now in 2025, the exact same mechanism has been activated in the United States. Most people think the danger of 1929 was the stock market crash. That's the story we've been told. But the real devastation, the thing that destroyed ordinary people who never touched the stock market, wasn't stocks. It was what happened to cash. And it's happening again. This is the collapse nobody talks about. The pattern that repeats every time. And 2026 is next. Before we look at what really happened in 1929, you need to understand why everyone gets this story wrong. We're taught that the Great Depression was about stocks crashing, rich investors jumping from buildings, millionaires losing fortunes. That's the dramatic version. That's what makes good television. But 90% of Americans didn't own stocks in 1929. The real destruction happened to people who never touched the stock market. People who did everything right. People who saved their money in banks. People who held cash. What actually destroyed them wasn't a market crash. It was a purchasing power collapse. Here's what that means. Between 1929 and 1933, while your dollars sat safely in the bank, the price of everything around you moved in ways that made those dollars worthless. Not because the bank failed. Not because inflation skyrocketed. But because of a mechanism called deflation, combined with bank runs and frozen credit. This is the pattern that repeats. It happened in Weimar Germany in 1923, but in reverse, through hyperinflation. It happened in Argentina in 2001 through currency collapse and bank freezes. It happened again in 2008 through credit contraction and monetary expansion, for completely different scenarios. But the same result. Cash holders lost, and right now, the United States is entering stage 4 of this exact pattern. The mechanism has been activated, the mathematics are in motion, and most people are sitting in cash, completely unaware that history is about to repeat. Let's start with what actually happened in 1929. The real story, not the Hollywood version. October 1929, the stock market crashed. Yes, that happened. Black Thursday. The Dow lost 25% in 2 days. But here's what the history books don't emphasize. The stock market recovered 20% within months. By early 1930, many economists thought the worst was over. The Federal Reserve thought the crisis was contained. President Hoover said prosperity was just around the corner. They were catastrophically wrong. Something that would destroy the economy for the next 4 years. The banking system was collapsing. Slowly. Like dominoes. Between 1929 and 1933, more than 9,000 banks failed in the United States. Think about that number, 9,000. That's systematic destruction. That's the entire financial infrastructure of America being dismantled piece by piece. The Bank of United States in New York, which had $200 million in deposits, failed in December 1930. It was the largest bank failure in American history at that time. 60 branches closed in a single day. 400,000 depositors lost everything. When your bank failed, your deposits vanished. There was no FDIC insurance. That didn't exist until 1933. No government guarantee, no safety net. Your life savings simply disappeared. The money you'd spent decades accumulating, gone in an afternoon. Everything you'd saved, erased. But here's the part nobody talks about. Even if your bank survived, your cash still lost. Why? Because of deflation. Between 1929 and 1933, prices dropped 25%. That sounds good, right? Things got cheaper. Your dollar could buy more, but it wasn't good. It was catastrophic. Deflation means your dollars are worth more tomorrow than today. So what does everyone do? They stop spending. They hoard cash. They wait for prices to drop even more. Why buy a car today when it'll be cheaper next month? Why buy anything when waiting saves you money? Businesses can't sell products. Inventory piles up. They cut production. They fire workers. Unemployment hit 25%. 1 in 4 working Americans had no job, no income, no way to buy anything even at the lower prices. More people stop spending, prices drop further, more businesses fail, more workers get fired, the spiral accelerates, it feeds on itself. Your $10,000 in the bank could theoretically buy more in 1933 than in 1929, but only if you had a job, only if your bank survived, only if you hadn't already spent it trying to eat, only if your employer didn't cut your wages by 40%, which most did. The trap was this. Cash seemed safe because it was still in the bank. The numbers looked the same. But the economy around you was dying. And when the economy dies, Cash becomes worthless not because it disappears, but because there's nothing left to buy and no income to replace what you spend. This is what destroyed the middle class in America between 1929 and 1933. Not stocks, cash. And this exact pattern has repeated 3 more times since then. Let's go backward. Weimar Germany, 1923. 4 years before the Great Depression. This is the collapse everyone knows about: hyperinflation. Wheelbarrows full of worthless marks. The story of people burning money for heat because it was cheaper than buying firewood. The photos of children playing with stacks of banknotes like building blocks. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November, the same loaf cost 200 billion marks. Let me say that again. 200 billion marks for one loaf of bread, but those numbers are so big they become meaningless. Let me make it real. A schoolteacher in Berlin received her monthly salary in November 1923. She was paid on a Friday afternoon. She ran, literally ran, from the school to the market to buy food before the weekend. Why? Because by Monday morning, that same salary wouldn't buy a single egg. The money lost value by the hour. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day, morning and afternoon. They'd take their morning wages, run to shops during lunch break, and spend everything immediately, because holding money for even a few hours meant watching it lose half its value. You'd order a beer for 5,000 marks. By the time you finished drinking it, the waiter would charge you 8,000 marks for the second one. If you held cash in a German bank, you watched your life savings evaporate in real time. Not because the bank failed. The bank was fine. The building was still there. The tellers still showed up to work. Your account balance was still there, growing even as interest was added. But the money itself had become worthless. A man who had saved 300,000 marks, enough to buy a house in 1914, could buy a single loaf of bread with it in 1923. 9 years of savings, gone. This is the inverse of 1929. In America, deflation made cash seem valuable while destroying the economy. In Germany, inflation made cash explicitly worthless. But the result was the same. Cash holders lost everything. Here's what people don't understand about Weimar. The hyperinflation didn't happen by accident. It was a deliberate policy choice. The German government was drowning in debt from World War I they couldn't pay. So they did what governments always do when they can't pay. They printed to pay war reparations. They printed to fund government operations. They printed to employ people. And the more they printed, the less each mark was worth. By the end, the printing presses couldn't keep up with the destruction of value. The Reichsbank was printing 24 hours a day, and it still wasn't enough. The people who survived Weimar were the ones who owned real assets. Land, gold, foreign currency, anything except German marks. The people who held cash lost 100% of their wealth in 10 months. Fast forward to 2001, Argentina, a modern, developed economy, not a war-torn country. Not a hyperinflation basket case from the 1920s. This was a functioning democracy with a stable currency pegged to the US dollar at one. Argentina was called the economic miracle of Latin America. Until it wasn't. December 2001, the Argentine government announced the corralito, the little cage. They froze all bank accounts. Effective immediately. You couldn't withdraw your own money. Not to pay rent. Not to buy food. Not to get medicine for your kids. Your savings were locked inside the banks. The ATMs were reprogrammed to reject your card after 250 pesos per week. That's it. 250 pesos to survive. Why? Because the government was broke. The banks were broke. Argentina had borrowed too much. The currency peg was breaking. Capital was fleeing the country. And if they let everyone withdraw at once, the entire system would collapse instantly. Every bank would fail within hours. So they trapped the money. They trapped you. The freeze lasted for months. Life savings suddenly inaccessible. People rioted. They banged on bank doors with pots and pans. Corralito, they called it. The sound of metal on metal echoed through Buenos Aires every night. Some banks had their windows smashed. People spray-painted thieves on bank facades. The president resigned. Multiple governments collapsed in the span of 2 weeks. When accounts finally reopened in 2002, the peso had been devalued by 75%. Your $10,000 in peso deposits was now worth $2,500. And even that was theoretical because you still couldn't withdraw it all at once. This is the modern version of the trap. In Weimar, inflation destroyed your cash while you held it. In 1929, deflation destroyed the economy around your cash. In Argentina, the government simply seized your cash and devalued it by force. No hyperinflation needed. No bank failures. Just a government decree. Different mechanisms. Same result. Cash holders lost. And here's the thing about Argentina. The people who survived were the ones who had dollars, not pesos, US dollars. They had moved money offshore before the trap closed. They had seen the warning signs and acted. Those who trusted the system were destroyed. Now 2008. The global financial crisis. This is the one we think we understand. September 2008. Lehman Brothers collapsed on September 15th, 158 years, gone in a weekend. The credit markets froze. Banks stopped lending to each other. Overnight, banks that had trusted each other for decades suddenly didn't. The entire financial system nearly died. AIG, the insurance giant, needed an $85 billion bailout. Bear Stearns had already collapsed in March. Merrill Lynch was forced into a shotgun marriage with Bank of America. Washington Mutual, the largest savings and loan in America, failed in the largest bank failure in U.S. history. Wachovia nearly went under. Citigroup teetered on the edge. The stock market crashed. The S&P 500 dropped 57% from peak to trough, from 1,565 in October 2007 to 676 in March 2009. Trillions of dollars in wealth vanished from retirement accounts, pensions, investment portfolios. But what actually happened to cash holders? In the United States, if you had cash in a bank under the FDIC limit of $250,000, your money was technically safe. The government guaranteed it. Your account balance didn't disappear. But here's what did happen. Central banks worldwide did the same thing. They printed massively. The Fed's balance sheet went from $800 billion in 2008 to $4.5 trillion by 2015. That's not a typo. They created $3.7 trillion out of thin air. QE1, QE2, QE3Y, to prevent another 1929, and it worked. Sort of. The economy avoided deflation. The system survived. But there was a cost, and cash holders paid it. It flowed into assets first. Wall Street before Main Street. The wealthy before the workers. Real estate prices recovered. Stock prices soared. The S&P 500 tripled from 2009 to 2019. Corporate bonds, real estate, commodities, everything inflated. If you owned assets, you got rich. If you held cash, you got destroyed. Slowly, quietly, without even realizing it was happening. But wages barely moved. 11 years, almost no wage growth. The cost of living, it increased. Healthcare costs skyrocketed. College tuition increased by 35%. Childcare costs exploded. The official inflation number said 2% per year, but real costs were much higher. If you held cash from 2008 to 2020, you lost. You lost slowly, quietly, through hidden inflation. Your $100,000 in the bank in 2008 still said $100,000 in 2020, but it bought 20% less. Money printing created two classes. The trap was slower this time, but it was still a trap. We're still in it. So here's the pattern. For collapses, 4 different mechanisms, but the same result. Weimar, 1923, hyperinflation, cash lost 100% in 10 months. 1929, deflation and bank failures. Cash lost through economic collapse and 9,000 bank closures. Argentina, 2001, currency collapse and government seizure. Cash lost 75% and was frozen for months. 2008, monetary expansion and asset inflation. Cash lost 20 to 30% of purchasing power over a decade. Every single time, the people who thought cash was safe were wrong. Every single time, holding money in the bank was the wrong move. And every single time, there were assets that survived. Gold, foreign currency, real estate in specific circumstances, productive businesses. The people who understood the pattern protected themselves. The people who believed cash was safe lost. Now here's the question. What's different about 2025? Let's look at where the United States stands right now. The national debt is $36 trillion. Mandatory spending, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt. This alone exceeds total tax revenue. The government is running a $2 trillion deficit every single year, and that's during economic expansion. Social Security's trust fund depletes in 2033. That's 7 years away. When that happens, benefits get cut automatically by 23%. That's not a prediction, that's the law. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is still $7 trillion. They printed money in 2008. They printed again in 2020 during COVID. The money supply exploded, and now we're in stage 4, the stage where the mathematics become impossible, the stage where something has to break. So what's going to happen? There are only 3 options, only 3 ways this can resolve. Option 1, massive inflation. The government prints money to pay its debts. The dollar loses value. Cash holders get destroyed like Weimar, but slower. Option 2, deflationary collapse. The debt bubble bursts. Banks fail. Credit freezes. Cash holders get destroyed like 1929. Option 3, government intervention and forced restructuring. Bank bail-ins, currency controls, wealth confiscation. Cash holders get destroyed like Argentina. Notice something. In all 3 scenarios, cash holders lose. There is no 4th option where cash stays safe. The mathematics don't allow it. Right now, we're watching the setup. The government is still borrowing. The Fed is still managing. The system is still functioning. This is stage 4. This is the calm before the storm. But the trap is being set, and 2026 is when the pressure becomes unsustainable. Why 2026? Because that's when the political and economic cycles converge. That's when the debt ceiling fights become impossible. That's when Social Security's finances become a crisis that can't be ignored. That's when the global reserve currency status of the dollar faces its biggest challenge. The people who understand this are not holding cash. They're moving to real assets. They're diversifying internationally. They're buying gold. They're positioning for stage 5. The people who don't understand this are sitting in savings accounts, money market funds, and cash, thinking they're safe. They're not. They're in the exact same position as the bank clerk in 1929, the German saver in 1923, and the Argentine depositor in 2001. So what do you do? The answer depends on which collapse scenario unfolds. But there are moves that protect you in all three. First, minimize cash and bank deposits. Keep only what you need for 6 to 12 months of expenses. Everything else needs to move. Second, hold physical gold and silver. 10 to 20% of your assets in precious metals, not ETFs, not paper gold, physical metal that you control. Third, diversify internationally. Foreign currency accounts if possible. Foreign property if you can afford it. Foreign investments. Get assets outside the dollar system. Fourth, own real estate if it's paid off or has very low leverage. Your primary residence with no mortgage is protection. Over-leveraged property is a risk. Fifth, invest in productive assets, businesses that generate real cash flow. Farmland, things that produce value regardless of what happens to the currency. Sixth, avoid long-term government bonds. The debt is unsustainable. When the crisis hits, bonds will be restructured, inflated away, or defaulted on. This isn't theory. This is what worked in Weimar in 1929, Argentina, and 2008. This is the playbook that protects you when cash fails. The pattern is clear. The mathematics are clear. The only question is timing. We're in stage 4. The window to prepare is now. Later is stage 5, and your options shrink dramatically. I've created a complete survival guide that shows exactly which assets survived each of the 4 collapses, how to position for stage 4, stage 5, and stage 6, and specific action plans you can implement right now. It's based on 95 years of real data from actual collapses, not theory, not speculation. What actually worked when cash failed. Link in the description, and subscribe, because in the next video we're breaking down the 30 countries ranked by collapse stage. You need to know where your country stands. The 1929 collapse nobody talks about wasn't the stock market. It was what happened to cash, and it's happening again. Don't be the person holding cash when the trap closes. Do it now while you still can.